FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
This episode of the Financial Survival Network is brought to you in part by Sandstorm Gold Royalties. Sandstorm Gold Royalties is a different kind of gold company. They purchase royalties on select mining operations and receive a percentage of the revenue in return. Sandstorm now has a portfolio of over 185 gold royalties around the world. See how gold royalties differ from other gold mining investments at sandstormgold.com. That's sandstormgold.com. Sandstorm Gold Royalties trades on the TSX as SSL and on the New York Stock Exchange American as SAND.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 121.19 coming to you still from lovely Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Well, there's been a lot of talk with the shutdown. It just hit its 31st day, and I'm constantly scouring the web to get different takes, different perceptions on what's really happening here. Came across an amazing article from somebody who I've been reading his work for, over 10 years. And hey, first foremost, as always, be a part of the show and write us, kl@kerrylutz.com. So his name is Thomas Lifson, and the name of the site is AmericanThinker.com. Yes, there are still people thinking in America. You'd be surprised if you listen to AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but there still is some serious thinking going on. And Thomas, you wrote this article on the shutdown trap, that you're kind of seeing it, that Trump suckered Pelosi and Schumer into this trap. And hey, Thomas, thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Hey, so you perceive that Trump has set up Pelosi and Schumer with the shutdown. What is his end game here? Because, when you're dealing with Trump, he doesn't just give, he's always out to get something in return, usually that is more valuable and significantly more important than what he's given up.
That's my perception, too. And I see him as a guy who goes into a field of combat, whatever it might be. And by combat, I mean, of course, metaphorically, disagreement, needing resources from somebody else. And he tends to look at a bigger picture than the other side. The other side has its ideas of what the issues are, and often goes for something else that then either major inconveniences or costs the other side that he can give up to get what he wants, or he gets something from them that they hadn't even considered as being in play. And I think that's what's going on here, because I go back to late last year when he had the famous session in the Oval Office with Chuck and Nancy and insisted on keeping the cameras there. This was the first clue that he had something in mind. The second clue was his statement that I'll take responsibility. The shutdown is on me, and I'm paraphrasing him. And that obviously shocked and delighted Schumer and Pelosi because they were thinking in the old framework of a shutdown is a terrible thing. We can blame it on the Republicans. We've got the media behind us. This is a slam dunk. Now, why would he bait them that way? He obviously wanted to get them to go for the shutdown. What did he have in mind? Well, I began to get a clue when I saw an absolutely stunning article on the Daily Caller. And this was published on the 14th of January. It was an article that was reported by the Daily Caller to have been written by a senior Trump official, someone whose identity was known to them, but who asked for anonymity, and they decided this article was so good that they couldn't pass it up. And so they vouched for the identity of this person being an actual senior Trump administration official. So I believe them. They've earned my trust. They're no BuzzFeed. And this article laid out the senior official's experience that, as most conservatives understand, most of the bureaucrats that have been furloughed are not missed, that a lot of them spend their days either doing other things. He mentions planning vacations and other things. Some of them looking at pornography, and periodically we do find out about bureaucrats that have spent thousands of hours watching pornography on our dime. I'm sure there's others that do their job, and this official, he or she, points out that for a lot of them, especially at the more senior levels, that job is obstructing the implementation of the Trump agenda, which they have many, many ways of doing because bureaucracies are complex and they have a lot of procedures, rules, and operating systems that are unfamiliar to the new people that come in and that can be used to stymie them when they try to affect any kind of change. So that got me thinking, and then my friend Clarice Feldman, who's a brilliant person, happened to mention that the RIF law, and RIF is federal bureaucracy jargon for reduction in force, RIF. It's what we call in the private sector a layoff. And that's what's happened now. People are furloughed, so they're not working. And after 30 days on furlough, the law requires that they be RIF'd. And RIF'd means that you lay people off according to certain specified criteria. And of course, being the bureaucracy, those criteria protect the incumbents regardless of their performance on the job. But still, if you're allowed to lay off people and RIF them, which means after 30 days you give them notice that their jobs are terminated. They've got 60 more days they can get paid, but the RIF law is there. You can actually lay off and get rid of federal bureaucrats if they haven't been productively occupied for 30 days. And by the way, that 30-day deadline has just passed today, meaning that tomorrow, which is a business day, it is possible for the RIF to go in effect. But there's a caveat here. In the last federal government shutdown, the Office of Management and Budget issued some guidelines distinguishing between an administrative furlough, which is done because there isn't work for people, and a shutdown furlough, which is because of a shutdown. So the clock will not start ticking on the 30 days until an administrative plan is published that says we no longer need these positions. And hello, the clock is ticking on you. The RIF procedures are going to be starting in 30 days if you don't go back to work. So this allows this puts Trump in his no-lose position. His counterparts, his opponents across the bargaining table, Schumer and Pelosi and the others, puts them in a no-win situation because either they cave on the shutdown and give Trump the funding for the wall and allow these people that are furloughed and many of them not missed, and they get to keep their jobs, or a big constituency of them, federal employees who vote 90% Democrat, who certainly 95. Contribute over 90% to Democrats, they lose their jobs, and the unions lose their dues for the unionized workers, and does real damage to major Democrat constituents. And by the way, that of course the real issue is in the House with Pelosi, and most Democrats tend to come from urban areas, and that's where federal employees tend to be concentrated, especially in the big cities, which are, of course, the deepest blue and the ones that send the most representatives to Congress. So the RIF reductions in force could affect most the Democrat representatives in the House who are from the cities, who have large number of federal employees among their constituents. Now, this is all theoretical. We haven't seen any such plan published yet. But going back to that article by the senior Trump official that I mentioned, why was that published when it was? He or she certainly made the case, and by the way, my guess, just because I like him so much, is that Stephen Miller is the guy that was the senior executive, because he's a big picture thinker and not afraid of radical change. So there is at least the possibility that this reorganization plan is, so to speak, in Trump's hip pocket, and that he can pull it out anytime he wants and say to whoever he wants in the Democrat hierarchy, look, you want to keep playing hardball like this? You think you've got me in a no-win position? Think about this. Think about a reduction of, 15% in the federal workforce. Do you think the American public is going to go into mourning about all those federal bureaucrats who lost their jobs? The ones who are paid anywhere from 30 to 50% more than comparable civilian employees for the same sorts of jobs?
Yeah, I don't think
Do you think
so.
people are really going to worry about them? So that's the scenario. We'll see if it happens. We'll see if it plays out. But my vision of Trump is that he is a guy who thinks this way, who thinks 2 or 3 steps ahead. And again, why did he bait them into the shutdown? Why did he say that? You know, the explanation of his enemies is that he's just totally impulsive. He shoots off his mouth. He doesn't know what he's doing.
A buffoon.
As if a guy becomes the premier real estate developer in the toughest market in the country by being stupid and lucky. You know, that's just not plausible.
Entitled.
That's wishful thinking.
White privilege. He's a beneficiary of white privilege,
white privilege that did it.
Yeah. Everyone knows that. Yeah, well, they just tend to minimize, like the same thing with Reagan. And I was younger then, and I didn't really know about Reagan's writings when he was spokesman for GE. And I went to the museum and I read some of these things written in his own hand, these speeches. And I was like, wait a second, this was not the amiable dunce that the media always made him out to be. Trump, I happen to know, I handled a couple of minor cases for him when I was a lawyer in a past life. So I know this guy is no dummy, and he's also one of the funniest guys around. Look, you had to have had a sense of humor for what he did to Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she might not have been laughing, but everyone else in the country was, right? Other than the left-wing, anti-Trump media, right?
Right. Did you, by the way, see, Gary, that over the weekend, he, at the last minute, remember, moved back his address to the nation on Saturday by an hour?
Right, yeah.
Remember that?
Yes.
That's why Nancy Pelosi put her tweet rejecting the offer on autopilot.
Yeah.
So it posted at 5 minutes after the hour
That's
of
right.
the time that Trump was supposed to speak, but it came out before he even spoke.
Inauthentic.
Now, that's some pretty shrewd thinking there.
Yeah. Yeah, and those tweets, like, they never really get into it, but the tweets are brilliantly constructed to provoke and to trigger deliberate misspellings. I don't know about covfefe. I can't say for sure about that, but it sure did dominate the headlines for like a week. The Trump tweets are brilliantly designed, and there's even been some articles about, the thought that goes into them, that it's hours and hours of thought to craft one of these tweets that sets the whole world a Twitter, no pun intended.
Right. No, I agree. The shorter the message, the more craft that has to go into it. And, that's when Twitter works, that's the upside. I'm not a big Twitter fan myself, but thank God for President Trump using it.
Yeah, that's for sure. So at some point, we might not even ever know whether he played this card or not in the negotiations, right? It might ever come out, but we will know if he really plays it and does the workforce reduction that you were right. But if they come, with their tails between their legs, coming back and hang their hat because they only gave them $4 billion instead of $5 billion. That's the other thing. I have this feeling, Thomas, that the wall in those prefabricated steel slats is a fraction of the cost of what it would cost for concrete.
I get that sense too.
Yeah.
I don't really know, and I know steel isn't cheap, but labor in construction is always the biggest expense, and nobody knows construction better than Trump.
Yes.
Come on. I watched actually him as he redid the Grand Hyatt Hotel at Grand Central Station, which was a major achievement, because the neighborhood was going downhill. I remember it at the time. I was a business consultant and traveling to New York all the time. And I actually stayed there both before and after the renovation.
Yeah, it was the Commodore Hotel.
He did that totally on the cheap.
Yeah.
Everybody else said it would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to renovate it. He spent the money on the lobby, and he spent the money fixing up the rooms, but he kept the same windows. He just slapped a glass facade on it, so it looks like a brand new building, but he did it for a fraction of the cost of anybody else and made out like a bandit. He made hundreds of millions of dollars on the deal. He writes about it in The Art of the Deal,
I know.
Which, by the way, everyone should read. I find it amazing that his opponents haven't bothered to read it, because he really describes a lot of his thinking and how he goes about outsmarting his opponents. But they think he's stupid, so why bother?
Yeah, well, they're definitely into underestimating him. And I remember there was a house of prostitution in the old Commodore Hotel in the lobby. That's how far the area had fallen. They were passing out handbills all around that Grand Central area in Lexington and 42nd Street. And, he single-handedly turned around that area of Manhattan. And, he's just given no credit for anything. And, I don't think it would matter who it is. He's a disruptor. Any disruptor would get this kind of treatment. But because he so triggers them and fights them and doesn't allow them to dominate the narrative, they despise him all the more, because down deep they know they're losing. But so what's going to happen here with the shutdown? Is Trump going to win, or is he going to let them go, save face? What do you think is going to be, Thomas?
Oh, I don't think he's going to let them win. One other key thing that he did that gives an indication of what his strategy is on the shutdown is, if you'll remember, at the end of last year, one of the things that he sacrificed in order to get the defense bill passed that he wanted was he didn't do the wall funding. He spent his political capital on what he regarded as the most urgent priority, which is rebuilding the military from the levels to which it had fallen under President Obama. And I forget the exact amount of increased spending, but it was in the many billions of dollars. And it's enough now that there's money in there that could be used for the wall if he declares a state of emergency. But the key is that he got the military funded through September 30th of last year, so that the military is not held hostage in a shutdown. And I think that funding of the military through the 30th of September tells us that's the real time horizon for the shutdown that he's willing to contemplate. And I don't think any of his opponents on the left have any concept that that's possible, that he could be looking ahead. I've always thought that this shutdown could well go into months.
Yeah.
And that, again, will pressure the Democrat constituents who work for the federal government or who are contractors for the federal government, who overwhelmingly vote Democratic, to be in touch with their congressman. And he's only got to flip how many in the House? 30, 40, get them to abandon Nancy. And then in the Senate, he's got to get seven Democrat senators. But I think that's doable, and if it's not doable, there's the nuclear option of abolishing the filibuster. But I don't think it's going to be that necessary, because I think as time goes on, especially if he's got this riff in his back pocket, that he can get them to cave. And, there's already people that are starting to indicate, well, we're not that against the wall. The chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, whose name, Benny Thompson is his name,
right.
said on TV yesterday, well, we're not, completely opposed to a wall. Again, I paraphrase. He didn't rule it out, wouldn't rule out a border wall. Well, now this is a senior Democrat, and he comes from a district with a lot of federal employees, and he's been in Congress for 25 years, safe district in Mississippi. I don't think you can ignore that, and he's got a lot of friends.
Yes.
So I think Nancy is in danger of her troops abandoning her, bit by bit, one by one.
Yeah.
And there's going to be more of that. I honestly don't. Trump is look. The Democrats have spent their ammo. They already have called him stupid. They've already called him evil. He's already the worst person who ever lived.
Yes.
So what's the Trump shutdown? What's the downside on the shutdown for him? Calling him more names, having their constituents have trouble paying their bills? Where's the problem? We've got over 90% of the EPA furloughed.
Yes.
Many of them not necessary. because
non-essential workers. I love that.
Yeah. So where's the downside? Who's got the most to lose? And they're so arrogant, so blind because the media always supports them that they can't conceive of being outsmarted or outplayed. And boy, that's the kind of enemy you want. One that you can outthink, outmaneuver, and set up the forces so that they don't win and you do win, no matter what they do.
Yeah, that's really it. And, in the private sector, when you have a non-essential employee, you fire them. In the government, they stay forever and they get promoted and they get raises and benefits and you pay them forever. My guess is if he starts with the RIF, the Democrats will come rushing to the table for buyouts for these employees because they'll know that they can't stop him. And the other thing is with the military budget, hey, if he was to move and build a couple of army bases right on the border at these key places that he wants, there's nothing that can stop him from doing that, as far as I can tell.
Well, we've already got Fort Bliss in Texas, in El Paso, Texas. El Paso is a very interesting town. I like it a lot. I've been there. But one of the things that made El Paso into a major city was that after the Mexican Revolution, the federal government said, we might have a serious enemy on our border here. Let's build a very big military base right on the El Paso, the pass that comes north from Mexico. So that's what they did, and that's why you've got Fort Bliss there. But yeah, we can put more military installations if necessary. I honestly don't think there's going to be a huge problem with getting the Army Corps of Engineers to erect the prefab steel slat fences with nice concrete footings so you can't tunnel under them so easily. But I could be living in a dream world. I might be wrong, but I see this as the kind of thing a smart guy who knows a lot about negotiating would do.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I guess we're going to find out soon enough. So we find you over at AmericanThinker.com. I see you're prolific. I mean, you have such fine writers there. Everything is well written on the site. So that's one of the great things about it, because there's so many sites, especially on the left, where the grammar, the rules of grammar, like all the other rules of society, of a civil society, have gone out the window. Anyways, it's daily reading for me. I'm constantly on your site. I love your work. And tell Clarice I said hello. I'm a big fan of hers and so many of the other fine, talented writers on your staff. Hey, questions or comments on the show? We love getting your emails. Just send it to kl@kerrylutz.com. If you're listening on YouTube or through conventional podcast channels, please subscribe, like, and share. It really helps me a lot when you do that. Thomas, we're going to talk to you again. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.